This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Norris Group Real Estate Radio Show and Podcast. Once again, this is Joey Romero, joined once more for part 2 of our interview with Brent Lee of Windermere Tower Realty. I think one of the coolest things that for me was I met Aaron, because I was there.
Me too.
He was teaching essentially the marketing presentation that he did for realtors. He modified that for nonprofits. And so, I remember the first day we were at the old, the old building that we had it at was the community foundation, over there off of Market. And the first class was governance with Dom Betro,
That's right.
and so
right.
we had some really great, speakers. And eventually that would involve some of the graduates. I ended up teaching governance later, but I remember the first day, I was super nervous. Like, this is going to be like, first of all, I'll let me go back really quick. So when you said, everybody probably thought I was a jerk, I thought you hated me for a while. I was like, I didn't think you liked me. I actually told Anna, I was like, man, why does Brent not like me? And she's like, no, it's not even that, But so
he's like that with everybody.
It's everybody. It's cool. So, that first day we're there and we're learning, and somebody shows up in the back, and it's, Anna and Jen are back there just kind of running like the table that just kind of oversees, and Aaron showed up a little bit late, and I didn't know who Aaron was, but they were like, oh my God, it's Aaron, and then the students, a couple of them knew him, like, oh my God, you're here. Like, what's going on? Like, are you back? They started talking about, hey, are you like back, or are you, just here tonight? And he said, no, I'm back. And, over the course of the next 10 years, like, if you want to truly, look back and admire a career giving back to a community that he loved, Aaron's story is amazing. The boards that he served with, and, the associations that he helped. And just the passion that he had to give back to a community that didn't need him. He didn't need Riverside. He was a successful actor, and then he came back. He got into everything he did. He was successful at. He didn't need to. He gave back because it was truly a passion for him, and he truly had a passion for the arts. So that was my first, visit with Aaron, and throughout the next, several years, if there was an event for PIC Group or for a nonprofit that the PIC Group would, because nonprofits started hearing about us and say, hey, can you send us some folks to help us run this event? We would always volunteer, and Aaron would always be there. I would show up and be there, and it's kind of funny. One of the memories that popped up today, I don't know if you saw it on Facebook. Today's the anniversary of us walking for Brent Lee for RUSD, and in that picture,
9 years ago. Can you believe that?
9 years ago. And one of the pictures is Aaron Phillips holding the baby. I'm right behind Aaron, and Aaron's making a goofy face at the baby. It's such a great picture. Can you talk about Aaron a little bit? He's meant a lot to the real estate community, but he also meant a ton for the community in general in Riverside.
Yeah, I think about I remember that same day that you're talking about, Joey, and I've known Aaron a really long time, but I didn't really know Aaron until our interactions with the PIC Group. That I really got to spend time with him and learn from him. And I'd be remiss if I didn't include him as one of my mentors too, because as you said, like, that guy could do everything well, and I wouldn't even call him a natural, even though he probably was. I think that would be unfair to him because he worked so hard at everything that he did. Yeah, he was one of the great ones, and I think his legacy will be felt by a lot of those community organizations in which he served. And I started this conversation talking about some of the things that Aaron taught me, about saying when to say yes and when to say no. I think one of the things as young professionals, especially in the early days of PIC, we were so excited when somebody would call us. We would say yes without really thinking it through. And before you knew it, you were on 3 or 4 boards, and you're like, what am I doing? How can I really be effective in like being there for my family, being there for my career, and being there for 4 community organizations? Can't do it, right? It's almost impossible. And I think Aaron taught me that for sure. Is really being intentional with your time, and not saying no all the time, but making sure when you did say yes, if you were going to say yes, you committed 100%. Otherwise, get out of the way and let somebody else serve. And I think Aaron demonstrated that in every facet of his life, and that's something he taught me. I mean, I remember just about every lunch we would go to, obviously some kind of community thing would come up because we were both so active doing things. And he would always have, was always a very positive person. But the only time he would get negative would be when somebody on the board talked about doing something and never did something, or someone said they were going to do something and then they would never do it, and he ended up having to, pick up the slack. That was the only time I would see him be negative, and it was only because he cared so much about whatever it was that he was spending his time, right? So, I'm always be grateful for that.
Negative's perspective, right? I mean, it might have came off as negative, but he was actually calling people out for the community, on behalf of the community.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
That's one of the things that he didn't like, was being liked. Don't be liked.
Nope.
He always talked about time, talent, and treasure. Give one something. And
Yep.
he's somebody that gave all 3 of those. I think one of the really coolest things that started happening as part of the PIC group is placement of like somebody like you on a board. Because when you ran, like it wasn't like you ran against an empty seat. It was somebody who had run pretty much unopposed for years and years, right? He was a great, board member himself, but
great man, great legacy, great contributor to our community.
Yeah. And so I think, what would you say is the thing that you're most proud of your time coming out of the PIC group?
Honestly, probably just the PIC group in itself. I mean, the fact that
it's still going now, right?
We're still around. Like I think the thing I'm most proud of, that original founding group of individuals who were able to not only come together at the time and work together to build something, but then to have that idea and that organization last and to be sustainable even past their time. I mean, I haven't been to a PIC group meeting in probably 7 years, right? I still stay, somewhat connected. I will go to their events. Sometimes they invite the old guys or old gals back. Tell us how it used to be back in your day, right? But I think that's the thing I'm most proud about, because I know how big of an impact it had on my life and how it led. I not only to me being on the board, but the relationships that I built in that to help build my business, right? Like that's how I met James Monks, right? He was integral to helping grow our business back in 2013 from a 6-person office to a 60-person office. That would not have happened without the relationships that I was able to build in the PIC group. So I think that the fact that the PIC group is still around and nurturing young people and developing them professionally and allowing them to build those same relationships that you and I were able to build, right? That's still happening, and it's still happening and helping others succeed and plant roots in this community, make our community better, make themselves better, and mentors and role models for their families and their friends. I think no doubt about it, it's probably the thing I'm most proud of.
Well, come full circle, the president of the PIC group right now is a realtor, right?
That's true.
A little shout out to Brad.
That's right. I think he's more on the lending side, but he's in our world. Yeah,
he's in the real estate world, is what I meant. Yeah.
And I've got one of the people that are in our office, in our escrow office, She's a young professional in her 20s, and she's full on in, just joined the PIC group about a year ago, and I saw her name on the slate. I'll give a shout out to Megan Durkee for just jumping in without asking any questions and being passionate about something. So I love seeing it. It's awesome.
To your point, the reason I'm sitting in this seat is because of the PIC group. PIC group doesn't happen, I don't end up at the Norris group.
Yep.
The last thing I'll talk about with PIC is the impact awards that are coming up. Can you share a little bit about what's going to happen this next PIC group impact?
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting, I think, and we're all real grateful for the current leadership and the board of the PIC group. Every year, for at least the last 10 years or so, we've had the impact awards, and we've tried to recognize other young people doing great things in the community. And they usually highlight 3 individuals each year. Somebody from the business world, somebody doing impactful things in the community on the civic side, and then somebody on the political side. I think those are kind of the 3 main buckets that they recognize each year. And when we lost Aaron, we wanted to figure out a way to make sure that his legacy and his contribution, not only to the community, but specifically to young professionals and to the PIC group, was somehow memorialized. And so this year, they're going to name the community award in honor of Aaron. That's happening this October. I know you're going to be there. I'm going to be there, and I think some of the original founders of PIC group and that founding class will be there to recognize and congratulate the honorees this year, but also pay tribute to Aaron and the fact that this award is being named in his honor. And as a past recipient, Aaron was awarded this a few years ago for his contributions to the community. I can't think of a more fitting way, at least for the PIC group, to recognize Aaron and make sure that when people, 10, 20, 30 years are down the line, where you and I might not be able to tell Aaron's story, that story will still be there to be told. So I'm really excited for that opportunity. As much as we miss Aaron, I'm glad that everybody will be able to recognize the contribution each year by naming another young professional who's doing good work in Riverside and in the greater region.
Yeah, when you approached me on this, I said, yeah, that's cool. So I want it to be whatever the MVP award is. That's the one I want for.
That's right. All right, I agree. I want to name the whole thing after him. I think that's how much we realize Aaron has made an impact on our lives and our community.
Sure. So I want to circle back before we end to the market. 2021 was crazy.
Bananas
on the real estate investment side, on the realtor side, refis. Everything was like, everybody had the best year of their life, right? Yep. So can you talk about how that went for you before we really talk about what the current state of the market is?
Yeah, our office experience, we've been in this business. My mom started this company in 1989. Her and I became a Windermere office, and we joined ownership partners in 2012. And it was by far our most productive year as an office. I'd say pretty much 100% of our agents had their best year volume wise. It was just really an unprecedented experience where you just had really low inventory, really low interest rates that just made this supply and demand on steroids accelerate the market. Where you put a house for sale, and wouldn't be uncommon to have 10, 20, 30, 40 offers on a property, doing all kinds of crazy incentives to get the seller to stand out, from letters and pictures of their kids and their dogs, to releasing contingencies and inspections and appraisals, offering tens of thousands, if not 100,000 or more over asking price. It was just wild.
So
2020 and 2021.
So that just brings to mind the importance of having the relationships, right? Because I'm sure some of that was just flat out just a sale, right? But I'm sure the people that were the most successful are the ones that could just sell properties because of the relationships that they have developed over the years, right?
I mean, I think this business really comes down to relationships. I think those that are in this business that are transactional are not going to have long-term success. But those that really invest in the relationships are going to have the long-term success. When you have 20 offers, and there's really not much you can do besides offering so much over asking price or reducing contingencies. It's really about picking up the phone, knowing the agent on the other side, and letting him know, hey, this is what we can bring to the table. We can close. What we put down on paper is not just an unfulfilled promise. Like if I write this down and you accept it, we're going to deliver. So I think while most people in our industry had success just by the circumstances, the ones that had really great success, offices that have been around a long time like ours, and agents that have been around a long time like ours, really stood out because of the relationships that they've built with their colleagues, whether they're in this office or another office in town.
Now, Bruce talks about it got to that because the buyer was or the seller was there was euphoria. It was like people were excited to sell because they knew they were going to kill it. So how many of those sellers now are hanging on to that price, like now, or as they have had their bubble burst a little bit, or are people still saying, let's list this much over? And what are you telling sellers now?
I think we're in that. We've been in that shift since probably April or May when interest rates started to rise, and that really gave people pause on the buy side and the sell side, right? You had people that didn't want to sell anymore because they had these locked in 30-year interest rates at 2-3%, and that if they were to move, that loan and that rate was not going to follow them, and that now they'd be getting a rate of 5-6%. And then same thing on the buy side, people were willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars over asking price because interest rates were so low, it didn't really impact the affordability of their payment every month. But with that change in interest rates, that also gave, they could just flat out couldn't afford it anymore, right? So I think we're still in that kind of fluctuation period, kind of that standoff, who's going to blink first. Sellers saying, well, hey, my neighbor just got this price, 90 days ago. I should be able to get that price or more. And buyers saying like, hey, well, I'd love to give them that price, but I don't qualify for that amount anymore because the rates are higher. So they need to come down, right? So I think we're at that kind of stalemate. So the sellers that are having the success right now are those that are being realistic with those shifts and pricing their home accordingly so that they can get an offer. I was just at a luncheon this afternoon hosted by the Inland Valley Association of Realtors, and the economist that was giving the presentation, he likened this current market to a dog, right? So he said that you had these houses, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, that were dogs, right? They needed upgrades, they needed improvements, they needed whatever, but it didn't matter because there was 40 buyers for it, so they could get whatever price they wanted. But now you still have some of those houses that are that look like dogs. They need stuff, but the seller's not necessarily willing to come down on their price because their neighbor down the street got that price 90 days ago. So it's definitely a shift. Things have slowed down. Things have cooled. But I'm hopeful and optimistic that based upon still the somewhat limited supply of inventory and the relatively low interest rates, historically speaking, that hopefully we're getting towards a normal market, because the last 2 years were just, they were wild. They were crazy. They were not sustainable and not healthy, right? Like, it's not healthy to have 40 people competing on a house and offering $50,000 over the last comp. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's not smart. It's not good. It's not sustainable. So I think heading into a normal market is where we're headed, where it's okay to sit on a house to be on the market for 90 days. That's normal.
How dare you?
I know. Well, the problem is we all have short-term memories. I mean, I've been in this business since 2003, and we haven't had a normal market, probably since 2003, right? 2003, 2004, and then things went bananas again, before the Great Recession. And then we climbed our way out of that, from 2012 on, and it's just been a wild ride. So none of us are used to normal, and probably nobody knows really what normal is except for probably Bruce.
And that's one
and
of
so
the
I think
things. That's one of the things that. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, please.
So that's one of the things that Bruce talks about. It took systemic events to really go crazy, right? In 2006, a systemic event was, the lending that was out there, the funny money.
Right.
Okay. And so the systemic event that just happened to us in 2019 was the pandemic. And so those are the two things that really, affected the market and why it had such a wild swing. I mean, we're way past the highs of 2006. The median prices. I work with Bruce all the time, so I see all the charts. It's crazy to when we were in 2008, 9, or even just recently, we never thought that we would get anywhere near those prices anymore, right? But lo and behold,
here we are 10 years, 12 years later, and we're way past the 2005 numbers.
So what is the mood of the realtor, the experienced realtor, and then the brand new realtor that's the agent that's in your office? I imagine you're having to be more of a coach now.
Yeah, I mean, you really gotta sharpen your skills and invest some time in gaining market knowledge right now, because it's not as easy as it was a year or two ago, where if you're a listing agent, stick a sign in the yard and wait for the 40 offers to come, and a buyer's agent is just try to build a relationship with the listing agent, not for more than the next best guy. Right now, it takes skills and experience and good communication. So I think most experienced realtors who've been in the business a while, they're probably feeling a little uneasy because they're not used to the slower paced market. But I think they know that they'll things will settle down. I do feel for the newer agents that they've never felt anything like this, and they haven't had to take the time to gain that market knowledge and gain those skills that make realtors valuable to a transaction. So now they're playing catch up to gain those skills so that they can provide that value to their clients. So I think the agents that are going to make it are the ones that are hunkering down and taking the time to learn as much as they can, to really understand the inventory, to understand the process of real estate transaction beginning to end, and spending time, learning from their colleagues in the business. But I think overall, I think the sense, at least in our office, is I think people are hopeful. They're kind of looking forward to a more balanced market. But of course, there's any kind of type there's an unknown and a transition. It's a little uneasy, as you go through it.
I get asked all the time, being that I work with the Norris Group, and so I work so intimately with Bruce. They want to ask me for Bruce's predictions and outlooks. Which I tell them I'm not Bruce. So you guys actually have somebody at Windermere that is sort of in that role, right? The economist, the market timing update kind of guy. What is the message coming down from Windermere headquarters?
Yeah, so we're really fortunate. We're our office, our Windermere offices have a chief economist based in Seattle that provides market updates and forecasts for on a macro level for the entire region, but then also for each one of the individual markets that we serve in. So his name is Matthew Gardner, and he's the chief economist of Windermere Real Estate. And he provides us with kind of similar role to Bruce, just what's going on in the market, trying to make sense of the charts and the graphs and the information that we hear out in the marketplace. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for us as realtors? What does that mean for our buyers and sellers? And tries to make that data and those graphs digestible for us to understand and to communicate those effectively to our clients, so that our clients can make good decisions to serve whatever their real estate goals might be. So we always have Matthew come down once a year to Riverside and give us a market update, a forecast, so to speak, kind of a look back briefly on what we've gone through over the last year, and then kind of what we have to look forward to, his predictions on what he thinks will happen in the market. And then he also provides monthly updates, video updates on just maybe one key segment on the market, like what's going on with interest rates, what's going on with the supply, what's going on with unemployment, how that affects the real estate market. So the more knowledge you have, I think the better off you're going to be. It's easy to get lost online through social media with all the information, good and bad, out there. But to have someone, that has the market expertise, who has the knowledge, and who can share that with you, I think is invaluable. So I think people like Bruce Norris or Matthew Gardner, who speak the truth, who make data-based predictions, who don't just have gut reactions to how things are going on the market, but look to the data, look to the experience that they both have, and information they have access to, and then and analyze it, and then share it with the rest of us who don't have that experience or that knowledge, so that we can also make good decisions based on the information that's provided.
So what's his general, you don't have to give me his whole presentation, but what's his general outlook for 2023?
His general outlook is positive. Definitely a cooling, a dramatic cooling of the market. But he reminds us that, for decades now, just because there is an economic recession doesn't mean there's a housing recession. So he anticipates, overall the market is going to continue to increase in price, but just at a much, much, much lower rate than it has over the last 5-10 years. He uses the term normal, a normalized market. Things are still tilted, at least at this point, into the seller's favor, but that's decreasing in every month, and you're really getting to a more balanced market. So I think he feels overall positive, at least from a real estate. Those involved in the real estate industry, whether you're an investor or a lender or a realtor, he feels that it will be okay for our business. We don't need to worry about a bubble bursting. We don't need to worry about, the Great Recession, anything like that. Just more time on market. Not 10, 20, 30% increase in prices or median prices. Maybe a healthy 3 to 7% annualized return on the housing prices. So he just takes a measured approach. I think he's overall optimistic, but things can change, right? Things keep changing, and they affect how the market's going to happen. So it's nice to have somebody constantly keeping an eye on the pulse of the market, and then providing updates when information changes and affects potential forecasts.
I spoke to another, big realtor in San Diego, and I asked him, hey, how's it going? And he's like, man, it's the craziest thing. I've got pockets that are killing it. And then yep. I've got pockets where, I thought, recently doing really good, and I can't sniff an offer. Yep. And one of the things that Bruce is always talking about is certain areas are going to get hit worse than others. We all know, we all have those areas in every county that, oh yeah, well, that makes sense why nobody wants to buy that anymore. So I think that's part of what's going to keep it from not going too high or too low. And the other thing is that there's just no inventory. I think that's the biggest overriding factor in everything is we haven't overbuilt California in the last, how many years. I think they learned that lesson. And so now Bruce doesn't see how it could take a terrible hit. Certain pockets are going to.
It gets back to that simple supply and demand concept, right? There's a huge demand for housing in California and throughout much of the country. And it's very difficult to fulfill that demand with supply in California just because everything's expensive, right? Dirt is expensive. Materials and labor are expensive. Fees to build anything are really expensive. So it's I think Bruce is dead on that there's not going to be any big fluctuation in prices due mainly to that supply and demand demand issue. And then just kind of touch on your point to pockets, right? Like we're seeing that too, just locally in Riverside. It doesn't really matter necessarily, I mean, which neighborhood the home is. If the home's turnkey, upgraded, sharp, the houses are still flying off the shelves, right? They're selling really quickly, and sellers are getting their asking price. But the houses that need a little bit of love, maybe would be like, need some upgrading or improvements, or an investor type special. Those aren't moving as quick because people don't have an appetite to invest a whole lot of cash after they move into a property unless they're going to get a good margin. So those homes are sitting on the market quite a bit longer. So yeah, it's a little hard to say, from week to week what product's going to move. But I think overall we're in a good place, and I think the sooner we get to a more normal market, I think the better off buyers and sellers both will be, and our industry as a whole.
Well, Brent, it's hard to believe we've been talking for almost an hour. So I do want to offer you the opportunity to tell people where they can find you if they need a broker in Riverside.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Joy. I really appreciate the opportunity. I thank you. I thank the Norris Group for this podcast, right? To provide information to those that are eager to learn. I'm grateful, and it's an honor to be on this show with you. But yeah, you can find me. My brokerage is Windermere Tower Properties. We have 50 great agents that can help you with any of your real estate needs. You can find us at Windermere Tower, WINDERMERE, a lot of E's, tower.com, or my email address, brentlee@windermere.com.
One of the other things that I'll mention right now is we're going to go ahead and launch I Survived Real Estate live and in person again in October 28th. So hopefully maybe we can get a whole Windermere table sponsor.
Oh yeah, we'll be there
this year. So yeah, that's something that I like to call it real estate prom. I know I've been to real estate prom.
And I think that's great. And I think that's another great legacy Aaron Norris created for our industry, for his mom, for his family, for the company. So I'm glad that we're going back in person, because I think that's one thing that makes that event so special, is bringing like-minded industry folks together to learn and connect with one another and raise money for good causes.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time, Brent. Thank you so much for being on with us, and we'll see you around.
Thank you, Joey.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS License 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the hard